Good day and greetings. I am Dr. Ezra Merritt, a dental provider currently practicing in the state of Florida. I earned my dental degree from Howard University College of Dentistry in 2012 and also completed a 3-year residency program in prosthodontics at the Naval Postgraduate Dental School in 2018. I was initiated into Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated through the Theta Sigma chapter at the University of Florida in spring of 2004. I am currently a member of the Rho Omicron Lambda chapter in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. I'll briefly be discussing a very controversial topic within the field of dentistry. Many patients are faced with this question: should I remove my amalgam fillings? Well, the answer may not be so cut and dry. Our objectives for today will be to review the history of dental amalgams. We'll describe the components of a dental amalgam, discuss the benefits and risks of dental amalgams, as well as review the literature regarding mercury exposure. We'll also discuss alternatives to amalgam placement and my final recommendations. Well, before we really dive deep into what an amalgam is and why we use it in the field of dentistry, we need to start with the dental cavity. Well, a dental cavity is also known as tooth decay or caries, and it's actually one of the most common health problems that we face in healthcare. It's caused by factors such as oral bacteria, frequent snacking, sugary drinks, and inadequate or poor hygiene. If untreated, it can cause severe pain, localized infection or abscesses, and in more rare cases, can actually lead to life-threatening infections. Well, enter amalgam. It is actually one of the earliest filling materials that we found in dentistry. It started off as a silver mercury restoration, where it was introduced to the Western world through the country of France back in the 1830s. Well, in 1896, Dr. G.V. Black, who's also known as the father of modern dentistry, actually published a detailed report advocating the use of amalgam. Even though he was highly regarded in that time, it was still a very controversial material and still is today. Components of modern amalgam, so the amalgams that we use today, is 50% liquid mercury. So this is what is the controversial component that we'll touch on a little bit later. Powdered alloys, such as silver, tin, and copper, make up the remaining amount. So why mercury? You would think that we would have been able to come up with another metal or something else to replace mercury, but mercury is the only metal that is liquid at room temperature and actually bonds well with those powdered alloys as mentioned earlier. Mercury is used to bind the alloy particles together into a strong, durable, and solid filling. So the benefits of amalgam, it's obviously been in use for well over 100 years. So why are we still using it? Well, amalgam is wear resistant. It has a high strength, so it's resistant to fractures. It's cost effective, and it's very useful in patients with high risk of tooth decay, those patients that require larger fillings, and it's low technique sensitivity, meaning it can be placed in some tough environments where maybe patients have a lot more saliva, and it's harder to control those types of factors. And it's also, again, because it's been around so long, has a proven track record. So, it's still in use today. But what are some of the risks associated with amalgam? Why is it such a controversial material? Well, to be honest with you, amalgams do release low levels of mercury, and it is ingested over time through saliva. Some groups may be more susceptible to the potential adverse effects of mercury. The high-risk populations we are concerned about as practitioners are pregnant women, especially nursing women and their newborns, and people with impaired kidney function as well. And in rare instances, people are allergic to some of the metals in amalgam. So what are the facts? Again, it's still being used today. So it can't be all bad, right? Well, mercury and its compounds are everywhere in our environment. So the fact is that between 2,700 and 6,000 tons of mercury are released annually from the oceans and from the Earth's crust into the atmosphere. Another 2,000 to 3,000 tons are released from human activities such as burning of household and industrial waste, and especially from burning fossil fuels such as coal. Well, mercury also concentrates in the tissues of fish and other sea creatures. So mercury builds up in the tissues of fish and other sea creatures and then can be consumed down the food chain by humans. So as we kind of continue to walk down the path of what are the facts, the following figures are based on what is termed no observed adverse effect level. And this is calculated for basically at-risk groups that we mentioned before, such as children, pregnant women, and ill persons, people with compromised health. So what they determined was a safe threshold for mercury vapor absorption by the lungs. So because mercury can be inhaled as well as ingested through food, it was 20 micrograms a day. Okay, so kind of keep that number in mind. Now, when they start to talk about through the GI tract and through ingestion, 400 micrograms a day was considered a safe threshold. And so, although there's a high variation when you look at the research, as far as what researchers felt was being absorbed through through amalgam fillings, they showed that a range of 1 to 10 micrograms a day of mercury was being ingested, basically, right? So that amalgam that gets into the saliva, that's well below, just keep that in mind, well below what is considered the safe threshold. And that was based on individuals with 8 or more amalgam fillings. So again, folks that have a lot of fillings. Almost all human ingestion of mercury is actually from contaminated fish and wildlife, so being ingested through eating and not so much through dental fillings. And as we mentioned before, as far as allergies, the research shows that less than 1% of the population has been shown to exhibit an intraoral allergic reaction to amalgam. So usually when you go to the dental office, one of the decisions you'll have to make is, okay, if I don't want my amalgam fillings anymore, or even if the provider offers that, what is the other material of choice? Well, there are several materials, but the main one that you'll be offered is considered or called composite resin. So the advantages of composite resin, one of the basic ones is that it's more aesthetic, right? Composite, you can blend with the surrounding tooth structure. There's several different shades that can match what your tooth shade. It does require typically a little less removal of tooth structure just because of the mechanism of how it's placed. And although not as strong necessarily as amalgam, they are very strong. The advantages are the fact that it is more expensive. It is more technique sensitive, that, as we mentioned before, provider really has to be very specific as far as how they place composite using a rubber dam, et cetera. And it's also more difficult, I could tell you from personal experience, to remove due to the fact that it actually blends in with tooth structure. And so anytime you're going in to remove an existing filling, it's very rare that you're not going to be removing a little bit more tooth structure. So what are my recommendations having said all that? So should I remove all of my amalgam fillings? Well, no, I don't recommend that you remove them just for the sake of removing them because, for aesthetic reasons or anything like that. The research shows that you actually would be exposed to more mercury during the removal process than you would with just leaving them in place. The risk of removing more tooth structure is very apparent as well when you go in, again, if it doesn't need to be removed. And the release of mercury from amalgam fillings is well below the acceptable range, as I said. So again, we're being exposed to mercury just in the natural environment. And typically it's going to fall well below that range that is considered acceptable. So what about future fillings? So you actually come in with a cavity and you're being offered the choice between amalgam and composite. Well, in that case, it's based on the best available scientific evidence that amalgam is still considered a safe material. So it really is going to be up to your best decision making along with your dental provider. And to be honest with you, a lot of providers no longer place amalgam fillings anyway. So it may not even be offered to you as an option. But don't feel like you're being pressured into a decision, especially if the fillings that you have in place are what we call clinically acceptable. There's nothing wrong with them. Ultimately, in this case, there's really no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of you being fully informed and truly weighing the benefits and risks. And with that, I thank you. Hopefully this explained a little bit more about this particular topic. Here are my references.